Hey everyone, welcome to Listen Love Connect. I'm Savanna Palafox, your host, and today's guest is Adalyn Smith. We will be talking about auditory processing disorder. And if you didn't know, I have auditory processing disorder, and this is my first time interviewing someone with the same diagnosis as me. So let's head over to Adalyn and get started. Exceptional Heroes brings you Listen, Love, Connect. So, hello. Do you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm in my last semester of my senior year of high school, which is very exciting. Senioritis is hitting hard, but we're gonna get through it. And then I'm gonna plan to go to college and study deaf studies with an emphasis in interpreting. But that plan could also change. I don't know, still in the works. But
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about auditory processing disorder. It's something that I've been diagnosed since I was little. And you also have it as well, correct?
Correct, yes.
And it's a little exciting because I've actually never met anyone with it. When I told people, they're like, oh, my son has it, but like I've never met someone. So this is exciting for me.
Yeah, same. I've had that same experience where, people will message me over Instagram and say, oh, like, thanks for making this page. Like, you're so helpful. And like, my son has it and I can see how your two experiences relate. But I've never like talked to someone face to face who has like the exact same struggle. So I'm very excited about it.
So how did you find out that you had APD?
I have like this perfect image in my head of me sitting in elementary school in like the middle to back rowish, and I just remember sitting there like not engaging, not participating, not looking around, like just sitting there and like concentrating so hard on the teacher just to like process all of that noise and process everything that was going around me. And then my mom, whenever I would come home from school, she'd be like, Adalyn, like, welcome home, like, how are you and everything, and like, what did you learn at school, like the basic questions. And I would be like, I mean, it was fun, it was cool, like it was school. Like, what else can I say, you know what I mean? But I remember saying to her, like, I don't really remember what I was learning about, because I just like, I didn't know at the time, but now I know that I was just having such a hard time processing that. And so I never knew what to tell her. So then after that, she was like, okay, obviously she's struggling with something. And so we had this thing in our school called mom art, where we had like art classes in school, but then the moms would come in and like volunteer for our classes and teach us about some particular artist in history. So like Picasso, I don't know, some random person. And they would teach us their art techniques, and then we would try to do it ourselves and make our own painting with their own style and technique. And I remember my mom always talking to me and saying, like, how did you feel about that? How was that whole experience for you? And I just remember saying to her, like, it was hard and I did not enjoy it very much. And it was just this constant pressure and noise. And then we would always have like hangouts at home with friends, or she would drive me around the neighborhoods with friends to go hang out with them. And she just noticed that I was never participating, never engaging, never like fully in the present moment. And she was like, this isn't normal. And then we went to different doctors, and we just kind of figured it out. There wasn't a ton of research done back then when I was 7 or 8 years old. And so we were just told to learn to cope and deal with it. So like, what do you do from then? You just got to struggle your way through it.
So did you accept it right away? Because I know for me, it took me until like 2019 to honestly accept and tell people that I have auditory processing disorder.
Yeah. If you don't mind, can I ask when you were diagnosed?
Yeah. I was 4. So my auditory processing disorder, whether it was from me, because my tubes in my ears were not fully developed. So they're supposed to be curved, and mine were straight. Gotcha. So a procedure had to be done in order to fix that. So doctors and myself and my parents don't really know if I got auditory processing because of that. And my ears weren't able to function with my brain. And my mom noticed signs like when I was like when people would be talking and stuff, I would just like yourself be just by myself. And when she went to the doctor and found out about my ears, they were like, she's hearing everything underwater. So that crucial part of me growing up, everything was underwater. So if I speak, usually like when I'm in a setting like this, I try really hard to enunciate my words and stuff like that. But when I'm in a relaxed setting, you can definitely tell that I don't know like S and H, what they actually sound like. I've just had to learn. And when I got to school, I wasn't diagnosed with auditory processing yet until I got to school, which was around 4 or 5. And that's when they pulled me aside and my parents and was like, she has auditory processing disorder.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Okay, that's interesting to know because I got diagnosed around 8 years old. So like definitely a 4-year difference right there. Which can be a lot in childhood years, you know, like a lot of stuff happens in childhood. And so that's interesting. I kind of started accepting it. It was like a really big like process. It didn't just like happen in like an instant and I was like, I'm done. Like I have APD and I'm gonna live with it now and I'm happy about it and everything, like yay, like lollipops and rainbows. No, like it wasn't like that at all. It was definitely this long process. And I remember it was like weekend after weekend after weekend that my friends were planning all these different activities and it was like this constant event after event after event. And I remember feeling so mentally exhausted just thinking about going to these events and just thinking like, oh my gosh, I have to go to this event again and I have to walk into this room and there's going to be so many people and I just don't want to deal with that again. You know what I mean? Like, you know the feeling, you know exactly what this is like. Yeah.
Yes.
And so I realized at that point, if I kept being in that mental state of, I don't want to do this and I don't want to have to deal with this, then I was going to miss out on so many activities. And so that was when it was kind of a change of mindset for me because I just had to change that mindset and be like, I want to have fun, but there are ways that I can have fun. I just have to accommodate people and they have to accommodate me back or else nothing is going to work. And so I just started telling my best friends, hey, before you talk to me, can you just tap me on the shoulder real fast, wait for you to turn around and then you can talk, or you know, wait for me to tap you on the shoulder and then wait till I can see your lips and then speak. And it's just all these small little changes that you make and it makes night and day differences. And like you don't realize it until you actually start making the changes and then you're like, oh my gosh, this disorder doesn't have to be this terrible thing that I hate looking forward to every single weekend. It can be this easy thing that you can deal with.
I have 2 stories. So a lot of times when I don't know about you, but homework took me forever.
Oh, just definitely.
Just to process it. And I remember coming home and being at school was difficult. And I just remember coming home one time and I was crying. And my mom was like, what's wrong? She held me and stuff. And I go, I just want to be normal. I just want to be like all the other kids, being able to go play outside and not, because I would have to be, and for lunchtime after I would eat, I wouldn't be able to go to recess. I would have to go back to the teacher so that I can get re-explained. And so my mom was like, well, what's normal? This is our normal and we're going to make it the best we can. And she did. A lot of the time she would have to take me out. My grandma was my tutor until I got to college. But the other story I had was, you were talking about how you read lips, correct?
I do, heavily, yes.
So I never read lips, but I learned very fast how to read facial expressions because when people would talk to me, sometimes there'd be times that I'd like ask twice to repeat it, but by the third time you're like, forget it. So if they were smiling or something, that's how I'd get my information. I'd be like, oh my gosh, ha ha ha, and I'd have general like feedbacks to go by.
Yes.
And one time I told my friend, and I didn't tell her I had like the schools knew that I had auditory processing family members, but I never told friends or anything like that.
Okay, interesting.
And I told my friend one time, I go, honestly, sometimes I can't hear you. And she goes, but you respond back. And I go, yeah, I just read your facial expressions.
Yeah.
And so she played a trick on me, and she tapped me on the shoulder because we were in the car, and so the car is a little bit harder to process people speech. And she tapped me on the shoulder, and she was like, said something, and I go, yeah, okay. And she goes, do you know what I said? I go, no, I have no idea. And her mom was cracking up in the bed.
Oh my gosh, I'm dead. I love that. Yeah. Those you were talking about how when you came home from school, like you just wanted to feel like it's like this normal kid, and like this, it's kind of like your dream as like an APD kid is like just to be like, all you want is to be normal. Like you just want to go to class and you just want to get everything the first time without having to say what literally 50 times, you know. Just the other day I was working on a math worksheet, and we were doing like mean, median, mode, and box and whisker plots, which are the worst. And it took me like a solid 3 hours to do 20 problems. I mean, like, yes, box and whisker plots are like lengthy problems, but still, like a math worksheet shouldn't take somebody 3 hours to complete. You know what I mean? And it was that constant every single day was 3 hours, and I was like, this is not okay. It was.
For you, for schooling, we didn't talk about this in our pre-interview, but did you find a certain subject to be easier for you? Like for me, math came very easy, except for word problems. Forget word problems. But when there were formulas, they came very easy. But English, reading, anything to do with language, that was a struggle for me. Did you find something like that?
Yeah, I think I have always been a better writer, and I've always understood speech more than I have math or English or science. I mean, no, math or science. Yeah. I don't know. English just has always come easier to me, but definitely not math or science. I think or like the reason why I think that is because math and science have so many steps. It's insane. Like,
that's true.
Whoever invented math, I don't know why you put so many steps in there, but like, let's like shorten that down, please, because I'm done with that. I'm done with steps. I remember having to talk to my teachers and having them, like, on the back of our worksheet, which was always blank, she would write down every single step in very meticulous detail, so that I could just like easily flip it over and say, okay, that's my next step, and then from there I go to here, and then it was like this whole flow chart for me, and it was 10,000 times easier. It was way better. I couldn't deal with steps in worksheets at all.
But talking about that, like how they accommodate you, what other things does your school, or do you know of any other schools that accommodate people with APD?
I think the main ones for me are having a 504 or an IP. You know, they're pretty similar. 504 gives you just different accommodations. So like mine would be sitting in the front of the class so that I can read a teacher's body language better and read her lips better and hear her better. Because if you're in the middle of the class, by the time she speaks and it gets back to you, it's already so muffled, it's impossible to hear anything.
Yeah.
Another one is having longer test taking time, just because if something is worded differently on the review than it is on the test, it's the same question, it's just worded differently, but that takes me like, a half an hour to figure out, and there goes my test time.
Yeah.
Just like different things like that.
Did you ever do verbal tests?
No, I struggle so much with verbal tests. I definitely have to have like, what's it called? Multiple choice testing, when it's like question, answer. Yes. I thrived off of those. I aced those tests. They were great because all of it was right there. I could reread it as many times as I wanted to, and it was great. But I think, like, aside from accommodations, I think the biggest thing for me was to have a personal connection with the teacher, because as soon as you get that developed, then when you come into the classroom, it's this immediate connection that you make, and it's, oh, like, are you tired today, or are you like have like a fresh brain, and like, are you ready for a 45-minute lecture, Yeah. So I think it just depends as well.
Some of the accommodations I got, they tried the verbal.
Did that work and that for you or not?
So it depends. So like with my history, it did not. But when I had to do like spelling or explaining what a word was, then it was a little bit easier, funny enough. But yeah, I did get extra test time. I did rebel a little bit because of, at the time, I wanted to be hidden, and when you got longer test time, you had to be in a different place. And then
I understand that.
yeah, and then I don't know if your school has it. I don't think they do anymore, but when I was in school, they had special needs classrooms. So at lunch, I would have to go into those classrooms and do different reading packets, which when I was doing them, I really didn't think they helped, because they're like, you're on level 1, read this and answer these questions. And when you did, you got level 2. And I'm like, well, I got 2 of those wrong. How am I able to keep going to the different levels once I finish? So, but yeah, those were some of the accommodations, but I did rebel a lot. So it wasn't a consistent thing because of me being very uncomfortable with it. I wish I did now. I think it would help me a lot more, but I still passed, got A's, B's, and stuff, but it was a lot harder.
Yeah. When you were talking about you mentioned something about taking a test, and it jogged a memory from my elementary school days. There was this one test that I had, and it was a spelling test, but it was all like the Q words, so like quiet, quit, kilt, like all like the QUI words, which those, like with APD, it's really hard to learn how to read and write and spell. It's like a very large symptom in people who have APD. And so I remember, I think I got checked out that day of school to like go to an orthodontist appointment, and I never had to make up that test. And I was like so happy I got out of that, because first off, I didn't study for it, which is not like me. And second off, I was like, so I didn't study for that. Also don't want to study for that. Also, I'm just gonna have to retake the test again, so I take it.
Right.
And my mom didn't remember about it, and so I was like, score.
Score.
I was so
That's
happy
awesome.
about it. It was great. Yeah.
What are some things what are things you do to help with your well, we've explained some, but like in your home life, what do you do to help?
Oh, good question. So this is kind of random, but throughout the past couple of months, I've noticed certain things that do and don't work, especially when the pandemic started. I was like, oh, I've never had home experience before with APD. Like, I've never had to go in a different room before, or like, it's just school environments and home environments with APD are so drastically different. It's incredible. So definitely one thing I would say is, whenever, again, very random experience, when my mom was washing the dishes, she always tries to talk to me. And think about it, you're washing the dishes, the water's on, and her back is faced to me, so I can't read her lips, and I can't see her facial expressions, which is 2 of the modes of how I communicate. And so whenever she talks to me, I'm like, Mom, just stop, just do the dishes first, and then we'll have a conversation, because otherwise I can't hear anything you're saying, Another one is like also random, but like getting ice from the fridge. My parents will start and put the cup up to it, and then I'll start pouring out, and they'll start talking to me, and I'm like, I can't hear you. Let's just do this later. So it's just like different things like that. And like turning off music or turning on subtitles when you're watching a movie or a TV show, like very simple accommodations that make life a lot easier.
And just for our audience to kind of understand, a room can be silent and someone can talk to us, but if there's a pen tapping, it doesn't just work. One single thing in the background can just not
or
just ruin the whole conversation.
If you ever experienced like whether people like in the audience today, like think about like your work day or your at home work day, or if you're at school and you're just sitting there on your computer doing your work, or you just got home from something, or I don't know, whatever it is, and you're trying to have a one-on-one conversation, and there is just one other person in the room. I can't have this conversation anymore. It's impossible. Even if I'm reading your lips, even if I have your facial expressions, there's this person talking in the background or tapping their foot or clicking a pen or turning or clicking a button, it's not going to work. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not going to work. Like, I don't know how else to explain that. It's just, it's just literally impossible. No.
Well, being in a Hispanic family, we're very loud and everyone talks over each other. And
Yeah.
so I remember at a just this past Thanksgiving and Christmas, there's a bunch of people talking around. And so like I somewhat engage, I smile, laugh, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But usually I'm just eating, right? And so my grandpa looks over at me, he's like, "Why are you so quiet?" I'm like, "I'm just enjoying my meal." It's too hard to explain.
I don't want to go through my whole life story and tell you everything just for this 30-second moment. It's just not worth it. You know what I mean?
Some
Yeah.
things that I do at home to help me is lists. Lists are such a big thing in my household. It's ridiculous because my mom, she's very fast. And so she'll give me like so many steps for a direction and I'm like, all right, hold up.
I know, like, can we just stop for a second and just make a list? Because this verbal stuff isn't really going to work anymore. I'm sorry, but it's just not, you know?
She does her very best, like, to remember, but sometimes she's just like fast mode. And so she'll just go like this. I'm like, usually there's not pen and paper around. So I'm like, first tell me the first thing that I should do, and then I'll come back to you for the second stuff.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah.
What are some stigmas you want to break about auditory processing disorder? I feel like there's not enough information for stigmas, but if you have any.
Yeah, I was talking to my mom about this actually earlier, and from my perspective, I've had a lot of experiences in school where I'll be in a really noisy room or multiple conversations will be going on at once, and somebody or like a really close friend will walk up to me and like they'll like make the motion, like, do you know what I'm talking about, like when somebody makes the motion of like they're gonna go talk to you or like speak to you or like do something towards you, like to have a conversation or something, and then they're like, oh, psych, never mind, turn around. I feel like that happens all the time to me because I'm in this environment, I'm in this crazy noisy environment, and I can't hear anything. I'm lip reading and going off your facial expressions. That's all the information I'm getting right now. And so they come up to me and they're like, oh, never mind, I'm gonna go the other way. And I'm like, even though I can't hear you, like I can hear everything, I just can't process it. I can still read your lips. So like I still want to have a conversation with you. I just like don't walk away because you know I have APD and you know like it's gonna take us twice as long to have this conversation. Like I would love to talk to you. Like come up and talk to me. It's just it's gonna take a hot minute longer, you know?
Yeah.
Another thing is my mom was telling me this earlier today that like a big stigma I think that people with APD kind of create for themselves is like you're in elementary school, you feel this feeling of being dumb and slow and stupid and like you're never gonna catch up. Like it's like this kind of permanent written in Sharpie on paper feeling. And you just it's just like it's like this low self-esteem, like low confidence thing that like a person with APD kind of puts into their body of like, I will never be this good. Like I just like you look at somebody who's like on a whole different academic level than you are and you're like, how are you even there right now? And then it like immediately puts your self-confidence down. And I think that we create that for ourselves more than anybody else does because the world doesn't have enough information on APD right now to have stigmas about it. I feel like it's more of a stigma if I walk into a room and somebody notices me not participating or engaging or having a full-on conversation, they're going to put me in a deaf or hard of hearing category, which isn't right, but that's the only category they know right now. They don't know anything about APD. So I think those are the only ones that I could think of though. Do you have any?
While you were talking, I just remembered, because you were saying how like we have like where we feel dumb and stuff like that. And and that's not the case at all. But I remember when I was first being diagnosed, the doctor and the teachers told my mom that I wouldn't be able to read high school level and middle school level until I was in high school. And I proved all of them wrong. I graduated college before my high school diploma. I did so much things. Did it take me longer? Absolutely.
Yes.
To understand those things, but I was able to do it. My mom, I think a lot has to do with support groups.
Definitely.
Yeah, because my grandma was my tutor. My mom was able to push me, like she didn't push me over, but like she was able to encourage me to keep going. And so that has a lot to do with it. But yeah, I was not reading middle school level in high school.
Yeah.
And then do you have anything you wish people knew about APD?
This is like such a broad question that like I've been thinking about, you know what I mean? Like, how can you answer this in like one sentence? You know what I mean? Like, it's so hard. And it's one that I've been thinking about for years and years and years. One thing that's really, it's like the biggest thing with APD is, I'm trying to think of how to put this into like great articulation of words.
Good.
Knowing the accurate exhaustion that one feels after a full day of a normal amount of input that one normal person feels. Because you can go to class and you can have a 45-minute lecture, and for a normal person without APD, that can be just fine and they can go run on with their day. But for me, as someone who has severe APD, it takes everything out of you. You know, you're trying to write down all these different notes and you're trying to pay attention to body and facial expression and read their lips, and it's just like so much auditory input that nobody understands how much emotional energy it takes out of you and how much physical energy it takes out of you. Yeah, that's what I would say. Just like knowing the exhaustion, like I'll try to explain it to my friends and they're like, but I'm just fine after that. Like it was totally fine. Like I got all the notes, like I understand the concepts. I'm like, no. Like that does not happen for me in a day. Like that takes learning one math concept takes me a week when it takes everybody else an hour. So that's what I would say.
You're talking about the notes. It is so hard because you're trying to write the notes that are on the board, understand what they're telling you that is not on the board, and you're like, your brain's everywhere trying to focus it and write it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yeah. It's just
it's
hard.
Very hard to multitask when your ears do not cooperate with your brain.
And then like you're trying to like you have a lecture going on and you're trying to take down a note, but then they keep talking and then you forget the note that you're trying to talk about, and then you're trying to pick out the next important piece of information, but you can't write that down in time, and then it's like going between 5 different things in the room and you're like, wait, but I just heard that, and then I heard this, and then wait, I'm trying to, it's like this whole cycle that just never stops. And it's
because our short-term memory is not great.
No, it's not at all.
So and do you have any last words before we end?
Yeah, for all those who are watching right now, I would say if you know someone who has similar struggles to APD, or if you're getting diagnosed with APD, or if you know anything about APD, I would say know that you're not alone, because APD, it's becoming less rare than it was many years ago, but it's still so not talked about. It's so it's just really not talked about, and it's not known as well as, dyslexia or autism or being deaf or hard of hearing. And so I would say that like whatever stage you're in of your journey of like finding out what you are struggling with, whether that's for school or at home or APD, like keep asking so many questions, because that's the only way you're going to get anywhere. And know that you're not alone, because you're not alone at all. Like you have so many support and so many resources out in the world. You just got to grab onto them and then like keep asking questions and keep going, because it's the only way you're going to get anywhere. So yeah, no, you're not alone.
Nope. Do you have any last questions for me?
What do you think the hardest thing about having APD is for you? Because I know we got diagnosed differently and we had different journeys coming up to accepting and realizing that we had APD. So what do you think was the hardest part about that for you, or in general having APD is?
I think not accepting it sooner. I think I would have gotten a lot more help.
Mhm.
And I think school would have been just a tiny bit easier if I would have just known to ask questions like you were saying, and just being open about it. And I think a lot of my friends would have been understanding. But yeah, just
Yeah.
I wish I accepted it a lot sooner.
Yeah. Oh, also one more thing, kind of random. Before I forget, if anybody in the audience is watching that's a parent who has a child with APD, and you're trying to get them to advocate for themselves, one thing that my mom and I did was we went in there and I had my little index card, and then she told like the basics about APD, and then I told my part about APD that I felt comfortable sharing, and that way it got me into the habit of going at the beginning of the year to my teachers and saying, I have APD, this is what that means. So if you're struggling with that, then like try taking your student into their teacher and saying, hey, this is so and so, they have this and this is how you can help them. It's going to help them in the future get ready for college and those bigger advocating opportunities.
Yes, because I'll tell you right now, when I went to college, I went up to all my teachers, and I went to psychology, so they were a little bit more understanding. I don't know how all professors are. I had one that was just a nightmare. But yeah, advocating for yourself is a big one, because college, I didn't put on the disabled part that I was auditory processing disorder, but I knew I had to tell them just in case that I needed extra notes and stuff like that.
Right.
And so, yeah, usually they're accepting. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me and talking. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you learned something. But wait, before you leave, visit and follow these Instagram accounts. Head over to my website, exceptionalheroes.com, to learn more about my patent pending therapeutic devices and to buy some Exceptional Heroes merch. Always remember to listen, love, connect. Bye.